Thank you for coming this evening. If you have not met me before, my name is Amanda, and I work in member events with Colleen Curlin. So hello, and thank you for joining us. The Battery is ramping up a bunch of events, and we love to see it. Look how many people are in this space right now. This is lovely. So thank you guys, because otherwise all these events wouldn't happen without you. So thank you. I will say that we will have the books available for sale and book signing at the end of the event, so stick around. The bar will be open until 8:30, so say hi to Andreas and potentially Juan over there. Yeah, hello. Exactly. And we're happy to welcome our esteemed speakers this evening. We have a number of them. We have 5 wonderful ladies in the world of California design. So including the authors of the At Home in the Wine Country, Heather Sandy Hebert and Chase Reynolds Ewald. So welcome everybody. And if everyone would like to put their hands together and welcome our ladies onto stage, and Chase will kick it off for us. So thank you.
Hello. All right, is that working? Yes. Okay, so thank you, Amanda, wherever she went. Thank you for organizing all this, and thank you, Mike, on the tech. We are really happy to be here. Thank you all for coming. We've assembled a great group of creative people, all whose work is all represented in our book. I'm Chase Reynolds Ewald. This is Heather Sandy Hebert. Claudia Juestel, who's our Battery Club member. Thank you very much for organizing all this and making it happen. Gretchen Whitter is with Architect Landscape Architects, and Amy Alper, who's an architect, all of whom are going to be speaking about their projects and their work. I am primarily a writer. I have been practicing that craft for a really long time. I won't say how long, but it's been a long time. And I've done 14 books, mostly on architecture and interiors and loosely traditional crafts. Heather and I met 2.5 years ago, maybe, at the Hivery, which was a women's co-working space in Mill Valley in San Francisco that sadly has been a casualty of the pandemic. But we met at the Hivery at an event. And I had just come out with a book called Rustic Modern, and Heather was coming out of a long stint at in a corporate marketing situation, and was really eager to pursue her own interests. And she had not only an idea for an amazing book that really needed to be written, but she had a fully fledged proposal that was a total slam dunk. And within a week, so she said,
I was a marketing director, so.
Yeah, she was she knew how to put together a good proposal. So within literally a few days, we had met for coffee, and she had her own contract for her book. And we pretty immediately started talking about working together on another project.
And so Chase has told you how we came together. My background is that I was born and raised in architecture. My father was an architect, founded a firm in San Francisco that is still in existence today. It's a very large firm, international practice. And I worked there for 27 years, the last 12, 13, 14 as the director of marketing. Worked my way up from coloring site plans, starting at the age of 12 for 50 cents an hour. Totally illegal. And loved it, but by reaching a certain age, I was doing a lot more managing than creating, and I think that's true for a lot of people if they're in the design field for a long time in a large firm. So I left to write a book, and that book was The New Architecture of Wine, and that came out in 2018, exactly 2 years before our book, and I have never felt so lucky to meet anybody than meeting Chase, because I know how to put together. I mean, I can put together a mean proposal, but I you know, you can say you write a book, you know, you're a good writer. You've been writing about architecture your whole life. I did do a lot of magazine writing in my 20s before I realized you can't eat and write for magazines solely. You have to do something else. But I didn't know, you know, how to crack that. And I'd heard of people trying to, you know, publish a book for years, and, you know, and then I got lucky enough to meet Chase, and she introduced me to her editor, and I sent her editor my proposal for the first book, and I had an answer in 45 minutes. So it was pretty amazing. And we really did start hatching the idea of writing together immediately while we were both immersed in writing the books that came before At Home in the Wine Country. So it's you know, been a very special process. And then we have a couple more in the works too. And then we both also consult and do private writing and work for architects and interior designers. Chase has written several monographs, architectural monographs. And so we've got a pretty thriving, fun creative life. It's pretty great.
And we get to road trip up to the wine country.
And a lot, a lot. I bought a car with really good gas mileage. And then through this process, we are just incredibly fortunate to meet an amazing array, some of whom are in the audience, looking right there, of creative talents. And when we assembled this was Claudia's, this panel was Claudia's idea. She said, hey, I'm a member of the Battery. How about? And we thought it would be fun to convene a group of women to sort of speak to it from our perspective. So that said, I thought this is a compendium of, this is a compendium of some of her work up, just so you can take a look at it.
We're all out of practice when it comes to public speaking, or even having more than 5 people in a room. So kind of nervous. Where do I start? So I was born and raised in Austria, in Salzburg, amongst a family of hoteliers and artists and musicians. And everybody was creative, but it was something that was taken for granted. So at some point, at the tender age of 21, I decided to escape to the United States and came to study art. And my upbringing in Europe, I think, is very much ingrained in how I approach my design work, and it will always stay with me because I was so incredibly blessed to grow up in one of the most beautiful places in the world when it comes to nature and architecture, design, art. I mean, just historically going back over the centuries, and incredible lakes and clean water. And I think I've been a little bit homesick lately, so I haven't been there in a couple of years. And then coming here, it was an entirely different world. And eventually I got into interior design, and I opened my firm now 22 years ago. And I picked a name with an A. And I like names with A, but also this was back then when we still had phone books. And then I had to find a name with an A that had meaning. And my company name is Adini Design Group. And what it means, it's a Yoruba word, means royal people. And it may sound snobby at first, especially when I come from a country that used to be a huge empire and there are lots of aristocratic titles, but has nothing to do with that. It's more that I feel like everybody's home is their castle, and everybody is the king or queen of their castle, no matter how humble. And so I approach every project, no matter how big or small, in the same fashion like that. But more importantly, I feel that nobility is within someone's heart, and it's not blue blood or upbringing or anything else. And my biggest goal always is to have really incredible people that I work for, my clients, and incredible collaborators. And if the people are nice, it doesn't matter how big the challenges are in the project, it'll always turn out great. And I bring that into my practice. And in terms of style, I am of the belief that a designer doesn't have to have a signature style. It's like, if an actor can do a comedy and they can do an action movie, why can't a designer do a historic restoration, something contemporary? So if you, I don't know where, up there. So if you look there, so there's a bit of a schizophrenic variety that doesn't look like it's maybe just one person or one design firm doing that. And there's even more variety than there's up there. But I like it that way because I want it to be driven by the client, by the place, And I like to get into their heads and figure out who they are and look at the landscape, look at the surroundings, the architecture, and take inspiration from everywhere, including their story and their travels and everything. So that in a nutshell is kind of what I do. And then I want to turn it over to someone I have collaborated with on the project that's in the book, which was just an incredible project. And actually we have architect in the audience who was working with us on it, Chennai. And it was just like a labor of love. And this project has really resonated with people, I think, because of the love that was put into it. And the clients are incredible and everybody who worked on it. So with no further ado, Gretchen Whitter.
And the way to Claudia's heart is just plant a plant in the garden that is chartreuse in color, and you're in. It's her favorite color. So we worked together very well quickly. Farther away?
No, closer.
Closer? Okay.
We'll just talk loud.
So I think of my career choice of how I became a landscape architect as really a regression to my childhood. I grew up on a small farm, working farm in New Hampshire. My mom was an avid gardener and my dad was a stonemason. So not only did we have huge production gardens and orchard and very fruit and vegetable forward family from the get-go, but we always had a room in the house that was under construction. And I found landscape architecture later. I was in my 30s and I took a drafting class out here in San Francisco. And my childhood love of my dad's drafting table and his scales and just like going in and touching all the stuff and shag rug and record player, I didn't care about that. I wanted to like figure out what his scale, and he had slide ruler. Still don't understand those. And so I took that drafting class and was just like, yes, I'm in. I get this. This is what I want to do. And shortly after taking that class, I was introduced to Artera Landscape Architects, and they hired me as entry-level designer. And I have been there for 16 years. When founding partner Vera was looking at retirement, I was promoted to associate partner. And my favorite part about your book is the two projects.
Really tell the story? Okay.
Is that the two projects that we have in the book were actually Kate Stickley, my now partner, was the lead designer on those projects. And they really were the ones that she stepped back and let me run the show and mentored me through it. And I was promoted to partner shortly after those two projects were completed. And I am now the one on the stage and she's here as my guest. So it worked out really well for me. And all seriousness, Artera, when I came on, we were 4 people. We're now 16, 18, somewhere in between there. I think we're 17 currently. And we consider ourselves a mentoring office. And so I just benefited from that enormously, obviously. And I think these two are great examples of it, but I think where our firm really thrives is in the collaboration. The connection to the homeowner is so important to us. Ultimately, they're the ones that are going to be living in that space. We're going to walk away at some point. It won't be our garden anymore. It'll be very hard for us. But we want to know that we have created something that the client is really, really going to enjoy. And that collaboration of coming on early and working as a design team with architect, interior designer, working to help site the house. We're very much a part of grading and working through finished floor and sight lines and passive solar and sort of all of that from the get-go. So that's really what our firm thrives on. It's what makes us happy. And also the most successful projects. I mean, the greatest thing for us is to walk away from a project and have a homeowner say, I can't imagine it any other way. Like that's just like, we're done. We've done our job here. So there's a project in the book that we worked with Claudia on, and then Amy and I are currently working on a project together, also in wine country, which will definitely be in their next book, right?
Oh, yeah, yes.
And on that, I introduce Amy Alper.
Hi, everyone. I'm really happy to be here tonight. I'm going to take a little bit of take on the notion of build. So I'm going to sort of set things out in, is that better? Thanks. In a building of a career. And so I'll start with saying that I'm from San Francisco, born and raised here, but did the most significant part of my professional training and work in Los Angeles. And so I started my career working at Richard Meyer and Partners on the Getty Center. I was there for 4 years. And as a side note, I was the first woman architect in the office. I think that's for another panel. And yeah, I have a few stories I can tell. So once I moved back to the Bay Area, I skipped the city and I headed up to wine country. And up there, regardless of the fact I was not, smack dab in the city, I had an opportunity to work with other world-class architecture firms. I worked for William Rahn and Associates out of Boston on the Carneros Inn. And then at that point, really realized how much I loved sort of that residential scale. And went over to Howard Backen's office, and I was there and worked on a number of residential projects for a while. And again, in part of this building, so these two experiences really set the stage. And so with the Getty, of course, I learned, as you know, it's a modern museum project, and I really learned to refine thinking so that any design move was really considered at multiple scales, really at every turn. And it was a way of thinking and conceiving and thinking in complex ways that started a way of thinking that is just intrinsic at this point. And then onto the Carneros Inn, that resort project, rural, really residential in scale, just set me on the path to know that smaller scale projects were really where I wanted to be. I mean, large projects are great, but you're 10 years in and nothing's gotten built. And so I just wanted to see that turnaround. And also it provides such an intimate relationship with client and all that comes from that in terms of that relationship. So in 2005, I felt like it was time to start my own firm. And through these 16 years, the work has been consistent and again, influenced by these two projects. So there's always a focus on, clear organizing principles, studied relationships between plan, form, section, often clearly in the service of bringing light deep into a space, natural light deep into a space, and really careful and artfully studied relationships between the transition between materials. And so I would say that I am really at home in the wine country because I live and work there. And so I'm there, but my clients are coming from the city and they're coming from all over the country. And they all have the same thing in mind. They all say, I want a retreat. I want a respite. I want something gracious, active, contemplative, farm to table, and now, of course, a work hub. And so for these projects, the key question is how to create an integrated architecture, which means architecture, interiors, and landscape. And so the firm, and I have a small firm, a small staff, and we aren't looking to get much bigger, up to 17. It's really these intimate and close relationships that I have with my client that are important to me. So when they pick up the phone, when they call, I'm the one picking up the phone. And I don't really want to have it any other way. And so just to say that the views, that being in wine country means that virtually every project has a stunning view, and those views set the stage for the project. And in response, and forgive me for looking at this, but it's sort of a phrase that doesn't just roll off the tongue. But the work looks to highlight the drama of approach, arrival, and the procession that leads to those views. Movement between spaces is as important as the spaces themselves, which are carefully composed and considered. The conceptual framework for the interiors is typically set at the earliest stages of design in terms of just the framework to hold everything together. And then, of course, the design opportunities are married to the needs and wants of each individual client. And so then with this myriad of aspirational aspects set, then the project is sort of held in the container of sustainability, which has been taken on greater and greater meanings over the last few years. And so it's not just energy and efficient envelope, but how do you live through power shutoffs? It's not just, defensible space. It's what kind of systems will support indoor air quality during 5 days of overwhelming negative air quality, where we're all stuck inside. And so the architecture touches upon all these issues, and every consideration finds its place in the project. And then finally, sort of beyond that, sustainability also has to do, as I've said, with the relationship with the client, supporting what they need to get through all the energy it takes, if you've never been through it before, all the decisions, and representing their interests during the design and then during construction. And I've wanted to do this since I've been 18, and it's a few years past that. And I still love what I do. And with that, back to Chase.
Thank you. Okay, well, we're gonna talk a little bit about the book and how we structured it and the projects we found and a little bit about what we learned and discovered.
So we started, what everybody always asks us is like, how do you choose what's in the book? And there really is no good answer, except that exposure and relationships and knowing people and knowing, the architects, the creatives, the designers, the photographers. And it's really kind of like putting together a puzzle. And the worst part of it is you're never done, and it's never good enough, and it's never right, because there's so much more. I mean, we could probably write a book every year about living in the wine country, and we'd never be done. So it's really quite astounding. But when we started to go through the projects, they primarily fall into two sort of buckets. One is a style that is more agrarian, that is coming from the agrarian nature of things, and then the second is a really contemporary response to the site and the environment. They're both absolutely authentic, valid responses to the site and the landscape and the lifestyle, but they're different, which is what makes it all so great, right? So the way we structured the book was it did really, we thought we had a number of chapters, and we ended up with two main divisions between the homes, and then we had a whole section on entertaining spaces, which we're not going into that tonight. But one was agrarian, really agrarian-based architecture, and then the other was a contemporary look. And take over when you want me to keep talking. Okay. And there's so many ways to interpret the agrarian tradition, right? There's the white farmhouse with that is absolutely lovely and at home, and has been the inspiration for many wineries, and specifically the white barns of Sonoma County in particular, although it's valid anywhere. This home was built by I can never say it. Polsky Pearlstein. It's a tongue twister, I swear to God. Based in Marin with interiors by Paulina Peralt. And then we made a concerted effort to not have all huge $10,000 in Sonoma. We have one right downtown. And this, I'm pointing down here, you're looking up there, sorry. This home by Bolin-Sawinski Jackson was an existing cottage that was renovated. And as you can see from the little inset picture, is thoroughly modern on the inside. So it was a real marriage of the two. So we thought that was especially interesting. And again, there are hundreds of fabulous projects from. It's really kind of an impossible task.
And there was also a range from brand new builds on virgin properties to rebuilds after fires, to rebuilding historic properties, including one very much in the center of Sonoma, with a very traditional arts and crafts bungalow, looking exactly from the street the way it looked in 1940 or whenever it was built. And then you go through that, and the whole addition is very contemporary. And so we found some very interesting things. And
And this project is designed by Amy, and it's in Calistoga. And it was, we'll talk about this later when we get to sustainability, but the fires swept extremely close to this project, but did not burn it. And we'll go into that later. With interiors by Jen McDonald, who's based in Marin County. And then we had the contemporary response to the environment, which is thoroughly different, but it does prioritize the land, the views, the shadows, the trees, sustainability, defensible space, all of the things that, entertaining, hospitality-based, things that make the architectural responses in the wine country what they are. You want to talk about that, or you want to talk about this one, or should I talk about this one?
You wrote about that.
All right, I wrote about this one, so I'll talk about it. And we did try to expand beyond Napa and Sonoma counties. And this particular project is by a firm called Ewald and Darling. And it's in the Santa Lucia Preserve in Carmel Valley. And I do love the way this epitomizes the complete indoor-outdoor experience, entertaining, hospitality, and yet Amy put it really well, the sense of respite and the sense of retreat, because a lot of these homes are second homes, not all of them. And some of them started as second homes and now they're first homes, because people found themselves spending less and less and less and less time wherever they were originally based, and they end up living there. It happens all the time. It might even happen to me.
and a process.
Yeah.
It's a process that obviously was accelerated
Yeah.
by the pandemic. So.
Yeah, for sure.
So this is, we're back to Claudia's. If you look closely, you might see splashes of chartreuse and Gretchen's as well. They both worked on this project, which is a wonderful project, and there's a great backstory. And a lot of people who read our books comment that they really appreciate the stories behind the projects. This was great because the homeowners had done a huge project on an existing home in San Francisco that's very traditional, and they worked with Claudia and Sutro Architects on that project. And when they bought this land here, they chose, they brought them along with them to design something completely different. And this is a really interesting project. Well, they're all really interesting, but this one's in the Russian River area, and it sits on a hill, but not on top of a ridge. It sits on a hill within other hill, in a hilly area with other taller hills behind it, surrounded literally by vineyards. And there was an existing structure below, and they made what I thought was a really wonderful decision to You park below, you leave the cars, you have this whole arrival experience that involves leaving behind, your city experience, your cars, your stuff, and you park below, and then you come up to this wonderful, incredibly sort of dramatic indoor-outdoor, rustic modern experience where life just flows in and out, and there's no discernible division between outside and inside. And this project was also an Artera project designed by Feldman Architects in Sonoma, and this was super interesting. So we go back to, how do you choose the projects in your book? Well, oftentimes, you're trying to achieve a balance. You're not going to have 60% white farmhouse style, and you're not going to have an entire book of contemporary. So you're balancing all these different things, but you're also balancing backstories. And this one was really interesting because the ground had been laid for everything. There was a guest house, there was a pool, there was, all the infrastructure, there was an orchard, but there was no main house. And when these people bought it, when the homeowners purchased this property, and so there was the perfect place for the main house. The site for the main house had been left for a main house, but no one had ever built the main house. So in comes Artera and Studio Collins Weir and Feldman Architecture, and designed this incredible they call it Sunrise because it faces east across this pool. And they took their architectural cues from the existing guest house, which had similar sort of lines, but was more rustic. And they built this really remarkable pavilion, really, that's just, you're sort of outside even when you're inside.
It's good when we've looked at these images so many times, and I still look at it and I go, oh my God. It's kind of amazing.
Lots of concrete mock-ups on that one to match the new concrete with the old concrete. Lots and lots of concrete mock-ups.
There's something I didn't know. Okay. So we thought what might be interesting after just kind of going through, our process in doing the book and talking about some of the things that were the through lines, regardless of architectural style. And everybody up here has got, such great insights into that. And the most obvious in the wine country is obviously indoor-outdoor living. And it's really true throughout California, but I feel like the emphasis is almost strongest, probably Southern California and the wine country. I mean, I live in Marin, and it's indoor-outdoor, but it's not like that. So I thought maybe we would just start off by, asking, Amy, how did you think about that? Because you had an interesting, with the rustic estate, you had an interesting experience where there was the existing walls, there was the existing exterior infrastructure, there's the existing outdoor fireplace that were kind of historic, and I don't know that they were technically historic, but they were sentimentally historic, that you wanted to save. And so really the house was built around the exterior entertaining and living environment, right?
Well, it was interesting and quite an opportunity to be able to build with this set piece, including these very idiosyncratic meandering stone walls and an existing ring road that actually led to a garage that the owners wanted to keep. There was a muscle memory to the property. And so with a garage in a particular place, things started to lay out in obvious ways that the kitchen would be in walking distance to both the outdoor kitchen and the garage, et cetera. And it set up an interesting dynamic because there was no sense of where to go if you were a guest on this property. So one of the keys, again, back to this issue of the architectural experience begins when you turn onto the property. And I think that's probably, again, born from this training in Los Angeles is what working, which set itself from a topography point of view, et cetera, sort of set itself farther afield from sort of where the main entry and the sequence wanted to be. And so it simply became an opportunity to, which I'm not sure all the images are, shown in the book. There are so many great images by John Merkel, the photographer. But the idea that from the car you step into an outdoor courtyard that leads you on a long walk to the front door. And the front door, this piece is set as its own object with the door there to greet you and pull you in. And along the way, you're seeing Mount St. Helena, you're seeing the vineyards, and this axis that sort of parallels one of the main axes in the house starts to occur. And at a very particular point along the way, there's a stop, there's a cross axis that leads and visually leads you through all the way to this existing half round of steps in the pool. And so the house was, in some ways, deferential to what was there. How could this new house knit itself into the property, into the geometry? And then ultimately you walk into the house, you turn, and your view axis, a layered view axis between series of kind of living spaces, outdoor spaces, and then ultimately capped by this incredible stone fireplace that was there and existing, sort of ends that experience. And
I just got the nod that we've got 5 more minutes, so let's go through the rest of the. The next through line was spaces for entertaining, and that again, that's that indoor-outdoor sensibility. And one of the things that came to us and that we became aware of, and you can see it in this, sorry, I forget about the mic, this kitchen garden down on the lower left, that was designed by Andrew Mann. And I thought Gretchen, we were at dinner before this, and Gretchen said, oh my God, there's kitchen gardens in everything. And we plant edible food, we can weave it in. So I just want to see if you had any insights into that.
Well, I think it just doesn't, I think a lot of people want production gardens, but they also don't want it to look bad when,
Right.
Tomatoes aren't growing. So we try to weave as much food production throughout the landscape. So an apple tree doesn't need to be an orchard. An apple tree can be a specimen tree if you find the right one with the right form, and herbs can be planted as ground cover. And so we really try to mix it in as much as we can when clients are open to it. There's definitely clients that don't want that maintenance of fruit drop and everything, but fig trees are beautiful. They don't need to be in an orchard. So just sort of weaving in where we can those production elements.
And are people asking for that more now?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, especially up where you can stone fruit up in wine country and
Sure.
and citrus and kind of grow it all up there.
Yeah. And then the other between really diving into and respecting regional influences, whether they're farmhouse or on the case of the lower left, sort of a sea ranch, an ode to the importance of sea ranch in the architectural vernacular of Northern California versus the contemporary response. And just the dichotomy of the two as people studying this and writing about it was just so rewarding, and to look at the different ways that people respond to our Northern California environment and the challenges we have. It's pretty spectacular, actually. And then the last thing that we saw was designing for resilience. And that means sustainability, but that also means one of us, and then fire resilience in, defensible spaces, materials chosen, and anybody just jump in on, what you think. It's clearly very important. We had a number of homes threatened in the most recent fires, nothing burned, but it came close enough to give people a really big scare. So any lessons learned there, or things that I know it's constantly evolving. We talked about this. It's a push-pull between a lot of factors.
I can just go very quickly. I think I think we all are trying to find ways of incorporating it in the design. And so from a landscape perspective, it's how do we make the driveway the fire break? How does that utilitarian element, how do we use that in a way that will help? Or if somebody wants a ATV trail or a golf cart, how do we make that the fire break? And a lot of it is also siting the house, so not having it right at the edge of the like setting it back just a little bit. And so it's a lot of collaboration as far as all of us bringing everything that we learned through different workshops, through experiencing our projects burning, what failed, what didn't fail. And there's always surprises. Like, who knew that even if the property didn't burn, all of the electrical cables melted and the irrigation and lighting no longer work.
We now know that
so
vineyards are a
it's-
very
it-
good fire break.
Yeah. So I think it's again, that collective and just figuring out ways to not look at it as a hindrance, but how do we make the designs better and use those requirements to really enhance the overall design.
Does anybody have any questions? No?
No questions?
No question? What? Oh,
Okay. What's one design or architectural trend that you wish would go away?
most of them already have, actually. Oh, okay, that's really hard.
Concrete stepping stones. We need something new. Just like with
Spoken as a landscape
with-
architect.
pebbles in between or something. We're just like
Well,
always trying.
I'll throw something out, and I don't know if it's really changing, but I think COVID has changed the way people have thought about open space plan living. And I think people are really, I'm starting a new project, and in part because the couple is from the East Coast, but there will be no kitchen open to the dining room in this project.
That's actually true. I could see that. When everybody was at home during COVID and all over, working at home, kids at home, living at home, and all of a sudden the complete open plan is like, wow, this is really not very, very private. So that, there's a balance. Quiet.
But in terms of trends, I think most of us always think outside trends. When it's a trend, then it's almost over and it's brought to us by clients or the media or something. We always think in design for longevity because fashion changes twice a year. An interior has to last for a long time, architecture even longer. So that not only does the building have to be sustainable in other ways, but the aesthetic has to as well. So we're sort of, I think, kind of blind and numb and deaf to trends. And we just think what works for this particular project, what works in general, what will have longevity in terms of aesthetic materials, durability, sustainability, all of that. And always try to think ahead and always search for new sources all over the world to have something that's different. And maybe sometimes we're the first to do something new. And it's not about doing something new, but just presenting something that's interesting and fits the client, fits the project. And then 10 years later, it becomes a trend again. And we're on to something else already, thankfully. So trends,
That's what
I don't
keeps it
care.
fun.
exactly.
We're all custom designers, so always looking for what that next one is. We don't repeating what we've done before is
Boring.
boring. But out of fashion note, polka dots will always be in fashion.
We knew she was going to wear polka dots.
Classic.
Just wanted to make sure.
Well,
Anti-truth.
I will say that if you look through the book, you'll see that all the projects chosen are authentic, original responses to site. It all starts with, in places like the wine country, it all starts with site and circumstances and microclimates and things. And the beauty of having such talented creatives that we don't really get to work with you. I mean, we get to work with you in a way, but not the way you work with each other. We aren't designing with you, but to see what they do is really, really such a privilege. And it's really an honor to write about it. And it's super fun to be up here with you. Thank you all for coming. We
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it.
Any other questions before we wrap everything up? I like to be the ghost. Okay, beautiful. Thank you so much. Let's put our hands together for our panelists. They'll be in the back of the room signing their books.
I wanted
And-
to add that, of course, we have books and they're for sale over there if you would like a copy, and the office will sign them for you. So I think you should definitely have one. It's absolutely gorgeous. So over there.